afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to IREX Business Connect. It's great to have all our esteemed panelists from different countries, along with our attendees, together on this platform. Firstly, I hope all of you and your families are safe and well. COVID-19 has changed our lives in ways that most of us never imagined. Here is hoping we all come out of this stronger together. Looking at these challenging times, we at GMN Media have put together this platform as an opportunity to educate all our esteemed investors, investment bankers, lawyers, immigration and real estate consultants about the attractive citizenship and residency programs on offer. Today we have 4 panelists, each representing a specific country and presenting the immigration program and opportunity the destination has to offer. Each panelist will have 20 minutes for their presentation, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. I would request all the other panelists to be on mute during the presentation of a fellow panelist. Further, I would request all our attendees to be on active speaker mode. During time of Q&A, all attendees are requested to click the raise your hand button on your screen and you will be allowed to ask your question. My co-host will unmute you so that you can ask your question. I would request all our attendees to refrain from asking questions on chat, as you will be given a chance to speak by clicking the raise your hand button as mentioned during the Q&A. Since we only have 10 minutes, in case you didn't get your chance to ask your question or your question remains unanswered, the panelists will be reaching out to each one of you after the webinar. Our first speaker of the day is Sarhan Evser. He is the Director of Europe, Middle East and Africa for Beyond Immigration. He will be presenting on Turkish citizenship by investment. Over to you, Sarhan.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohan. Thank you for giving us this chance, and hello everybody. So I will start sharing my screen. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, it's perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great. So again, hello everybody. My name is Sarhan Evser. I'm a director at Beyond Immigration, and I'm going to talk about Turkish citizenship by investment today. It's the one of the latest addition to the citizenship by investment portfolio, and it's becoming more and more popular. Today, together, we will obviously, I'll start with our company, who we are, what we do, how we do, and then a little bit of Turkey, the country introduction. And we will look into the mechanics of the program. Obviously, its process timeline and what documents are required for the program, why it's so popular, what are the benefits of the program. And as a Beyond, obviously, what makes us different. And I will show a little bit of property selection. That's obviously not limited to what I'm going to show, but I obviously picked up some for today's presentation. About us, we advise individuals, families, and governments on residence and citizenship by investment program. And our founders and managing partners have been in the industry for over 20 years. And obviously, they are the investment migration pioneers and very well-known figures of the industry. Today, basically, we have a global presence. We have offices all over the world. We have Dubai, London, Hong Kong, China, Moscow, Kiev, Istanbul offices. And about the country, Turkey is nestled between Europe and Asia. It has a unique geopolitical and geostrategic position. Its population is around 83 million, and half of it is under 30 years old. It's such a dynamic population. And Turkey is a member of G20, and it's the 13th largest economy today. The advantage of the location, again, as I mentioned, Turkey has a chance to access 16 different time zones in one day. So that's an incredible advantage for the business. And last year only 56 million tourists visited Turkey. So Turkey's disposition gave obviously some advantages as well. So for example, it's worth mentioning that Turkey has a customs union treaty and 27 bilateral treaties with different countries. So although Turkey is a big country, 82 million population, but also it has access to the 1 billion around population consumers. So the program itself, relatively a new program. The law was enacted back in 2016. However, it gained its popularity after the revision made in 2018. So the investment threshold was reduced from $1 million to $250,000 in 2018. So the program gained its popularity. So it is expected to make an economic contribution from the applicants, and the applicant has to be over 18 years old. And the other options, what are the options obviously for those economic contribution are either government bonds or cash deposit of $500,000 to a bank, 250,000 worth of real estate investments, or creating 50 jobs. So one or the other. And I chose most popular options today because over 95% of the applications are the real estate, and it's only 250,000, and must hold period is only 3 years. Unlike the other programs, if you are familiar with the citizenship by investment programs or the residence by investment programs, generally speaking, must hold periods are starting from 5 years. In Turkish program, it's only 3 years. So I chose the real estate processing details. However, more or less for all options is the same. So we have to make sure that the client starts with obtaining a tax ID in Turkey because it's a prerequisite. And if anybody requires a residence permit in Turkey and eventually a citizenship, then it starts with obtaining a tax ID. So after tax ID, the bank opening stage is coming. And if it's a property investment, then choosing the property comes after. So obtaining the certificate of conformity means the government has approved agents for the surveyor service evaluation reports. So the government bodies need to make sure the property that the applicant is buying minimum worth $250,000. So actually that's kind of a measure against any extortion in the real estate prices. So it's the real value of the property that the applicant can make sure. So after that conformity certificate, the residence permit stage comes along, and after the residence permit, then the citizenship. So all in all can be completed between 3 to 6 months. Is quite a fast and effective process. So what are the required documents? If you are familiar with the residence and citizenship by investment programs, more or less the documents are same, but some programs are more complicated than the others. So Turkey are not under that complicated category, I should say. So passport copies of the applicants, birth certificates. If it's a family, then a marriage certificate. And all the applicants have to have this health insurance for Turkey for their health expenses to be covered. And they have to give a power of attorney to our lawyers and for the application basically, and all the public application forms have to be filled. So our lawyers can handle all these. And there are two types of clients. One prefers to visit and see the property and then do all the procedures while they're in Turkey. They're more than welcome. We can host them and help them with everything. Our Istanbul office basically very welcoming. And if they don't want to, they only need to give us power of attorney, and again we can handle everything remotely. So why Turkish citizenship by investment became so popular? There are several reasons, but these are, I think, the important ones to mention. It doesn't differ from the citizenship attained by birth. So every similar, exactly the same rights, for the investors and the citizens by birth. It can be passed on to the next generations. And Turkey, there is no inheritance tax in Turkey, unlike the UK, where I am participating, is 40%. And no wealth declaration is required in Turkey. Turkish citizens also can enjoy visa-free travel to 110 different countries. And also, Turkish citizens have a privilege to have a chance to EU treaty country, because this US access through EU treaty again is a hot topic, and Turkey is a treaty country. And also, Turkey has a special agreement between the UK and Turkey. It's called Turkish Business Person Visa, and it's also known as Ankara Agreement. Any Turkish investor with a sound business plan can obviously do and move into the UK and do a business in the UK. Requirements are exactly similar to E2, even less, because there is no investment threshold here. In maybe E2, it's recommended to at least invest around 100,000 US dollars, but for the UK access, that doesn't define. However, having said that, Brexit is happening at the end of this year. We will see what's going to happen after Brexit, but until the end of this year, this access for Turkish citizens to Turkey, from Turkey to UK, is valid. And Turkish citizenship by investment is a donation. It's not a donation, it's an investment, unlike some of the other programs. Again, the ones who are familiar with the investment migration industry, there are two options, either a donation or investment, and most of them are real estate investments. It may suit, both suit to different type of clientele, but the Turkey here, it is an investment, not a donation. And the must hold period is only 3 years. So after 3 years, within that 3 years, clients can obviously generate a rental income. And after 3 years, they can resale the property. So I mentioned E2 visa route to US. I'll quickly touch upon some important points there. We also can help with our partners who's been doing this for many years. Investor must be a citizen of treaty country. As I mentioned, Turkish citizens are part of that treaty. And applicants must invest a substantial amount of capital. This is not described and defined. However, it is recommended by the experts that should be around 100,000 US dollars and more. The applicant obviously has to be active in the business, unlike EB5. So they have to have this managerial decisions position, and then they have to own more than 50% of the business. So they need to control the business. But the good side of it, they can create a new business, investing in an existing business or investing in a franchise. So there are a lot of options. So why this is important to mention, these days EB5 threshold is higher, and waiting list for certain nations are long. For India, I think it's around 8 years. EB5 is still a great program. So this E2 could be a different type of access or can be combined. I think later on the panelists will cover in detail. What makes us different as a Beyond? So basically, we from first point of contact till the passport acquisition, we offer hand-holding service throughout the whole process. So as I mentioned, there are two types of clients. One client type would be willing to visit the country and see the property themselves. They are more than welcome. We shortlist all the properties as per their liking. We understand and identify their needs and wants, and then we shortlist accordingly. So when they arrive, we pick them up, and obviously we provide a chauffeur-driven property viewings for them. And then while they are still in Turkey, we can go into the legal sides of the application and sort everything out while they are there. That is one type. And if they don't have time and different commitments and not able to travel, all they need to do, obviously, to give us the power of attorney to our lawyers, and then from A to Z, we handle everything on their behalf. Again, we try to choose our property portfolio, which basically give the best possibility for the rental yield or the capital appreciation. If we look at the property options in Turkey, I will just give options briefly. Istanbul is obviously the most popular city. It's one of the most revisited cities as well in the world. The projects that we choose in Istanbul are always in the prime locations, and most of them are serviced apartments, hotel type properties. So the minimum threshold is 250. So we start from there. It can go up to 500,000 or even more. So each project have it's their own system, rental pool system, to help international investors, because it may not be easy to manage the property remotely. So this management system in place is a plus and almost a must. And our office in Istanbul can obviously facilitate everything or help, but this is from the developer's side, that management system is very helpful. And most of the properties have between 4 to 7% rental yield. Or, of course, the numbers are given before the coronavirus problems. But I'm sure if everything goes to normal, these numbers will definitely be valid. We either focus on the projects that are completed, up and running, or due for completion shortly. So we don't prefer the properties that will have a long run, completion dates. And as I mentioned, either those properties are run by very well-known international hotel management companies, or nationally, domestic market, very well-known brands are managing those properties. So if I want to show some photos, they all have the reception system and leisure centers, and swimming pools and saunas. They all have this furnished options. The clients can also refurbish it and furnish it to their likings, but these are the standards. And for the hotel concepts, obviously, it's better to stick to the standards. But if anybody wants to make any changes, they are free to do so. These are only samples. And the hotel concepts, of course, as I mentioned, last year, only 56 million tourists visited Turkey. And it was, of course, all the hotels and Airbnb type or hotel service apartments were full. And also the other option we chose is Bodrum, which is the southwest of Turkey. It's very popular for the domestic tourists in Turkey, so Turkish tourists, as well as the international travelers. So the projects that we choose there are either serviced apartments again or luxury villas. So we either choose our destinations according to, again, the preference of the tourists. They are in the center of Bodrum, or important destinations called Yalıkavak, where the world famous, renowned marina is located. So the projects start from 150,000 US dollars, can go up to million. So for 130 option, the applicant can buy 2 of it to qualify for the 250 threshold. So most of the projects offer 24 hours concierge service, private beach, private VIP shuttle service from airport to the obviously villas or the service apartments, and vice versa from there to airport services. So those are some photos that I would like to show how beautiful this Bodrum. So those are the private beach options. And Bodrum season is 4 or 5 months minimum, but also again there are winter visitors as well. So these properties here also have again a rental yield chance, and as well as somebody who wants to enjoy their holidays there. To summarize, obviously, we are the experts in investment migration industry, so we have the expertise to handle all the application from A to Z, either for the clients who would like to visit or who would like to manage the application remotely. Just for an information, we only not doing this for Turkish citizenship by investment, but there are around today around more than 20 programs, residence by or citizenship by investment, residence by investment programs, and at beyond. We basically handle all the programs from A to Z. Turkish citizenship by investment, as I mentioned earlier, it's very attractive. There are two types of clients again here who looks at Turkey as a second home. Let's say back in their home country, if they face any unrest or any problem, so they think that Turkey might be their second home, and they can move and live in Turkey because in Turkey health, obviously world standard health services exist, and international schools for international community and expats and anybody who wants to make the country second home. So those are the advantages. Again, the accessibility is a big advantage because there are direct flights from Turkey to roughly 220 different destinations. Not today, obviously, it's the coronavirus problems, but in general, and 16 different time zones are accessible in a day, from Tokyo to New York. The program itself is quite a fast program and effective processing. Some programs we all know due diligence takes too long and sometimes very complicated. Turkey's is the only requirement here. The applicant obviously should not be a threat to the nation, and apart from that, all the applicants are welcome. Obviously, the basic due diligence checks are done, and as I mentioned, that the applicant doesn't stand any threat to the country and the nation. It's again, it's an investment, not a donation. We've been through that. Again, we will help with the best possible options to identify the best possible option for our clients. In our Istanbul office, we have investment migration experts, real estate experts, and we work with very experienced lawyers. And it's also worth, I think, mentioning that Turkey has this unique position for relocation to US and UK together. We know that, who is familiar with the industry, Grenada has E2 option. It's comparable with Turkey and Grenada for E2, but Turkey has that plus UK relocation option. That's an interesting plus for Turkey. So as beyond, we offer from A to Z for our clients, and in Istanbul, obviously, wherever the client is, we have either offices or representation in that country. So journey starts from the home country and it ends in the target country with beyond help. I think for the audience today, these are my contact details. Please feel free to contact, and I'm more than happy to answer any question today. And later on, if anybody is looking for future partnership and interested in any subject that's been covered today, please feel free to contact me, and then I'm happy to assist. I think that's all from me. Okay. Happy to answer the questions.
That's great, sir, and thank you so much. We now open the platform for Q&As. I think we already have a couple of people who have raised their hands. Lavanya, can you take it from here?
Yeah, hi. So our question will be from Mark. Mark, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Sirhan. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you very much. Yourself?
Yes, I'm doing absolutely great. Now, I have three questions for you. So the first question that I have for you, just let me just go back because I just started there. Okay. So the question is that does the investment for the EDU have to be made in full? Okay, once you get a Turkish passport, and what happens if after the investment is made in the United States and the EDU gets rejected?
This is, shall I answer now or wait for all the questions? I think it's better if it's an E2 specific question. I think what I covered here was the Turkish citizenship by investment, more likely. Obviously, rejection, we need to look into the reasons. I haven't heard many rejections because our partners has been helping with many applicants, and they work with a very famous franchise option in the United States that I know of. And I haven't heard any rejection, but there might be a rejection. Of course, that's the government institution decision, but we should understand why the rejection is obviously what's the decision behind that. But from our perspective, we haven't heard any rejection, and also we are not used to that because all our applications almost are 100% success rates.
That's fantastic. You also talked about the UK relocation. So could you just explain, more on that? Because, UK, just got to exit from the EU, and you talked of relocation. Can you just explain a little bit more on this?
Of course. Thank you for the question. Because I didn't have a chance to, expand that during the presentation. Now I'll take the opportunity. UK and Turkey has a long-lasting agreement relation, and that was the part of the EU. So basically, going back to your question, it's related to the EU agreements with the UK. So Turkey and UK has this agreement for many long time, I think since 1960s, but it was started to be effectively used for the last 10-15 years. So many Turkish business people, applicants, discovered this opportunity to come with a proper business plan. And then they obviously speak the language English, and then they have experience. So they would like to do some sort of business in the UK. So once they prove that there is a solid business plan here, and then business connections in the UK that they can sell their services or the products, then there is not much to mention really. UK government gives the chance to the entrepreneurs or investors to come in from Turkey. So the visas, they offer these days only 1 year and then extension stages later on. So Brexit will probably have some impact on that. We will wait and see. This is still valid until the end of 2020. So anybody from Turkey can still come to the UK with a sound business plan and get the visa for themselves and for their families. Again, similar to E2, the children up to 21 is again eligible for that. And the main applicant has to do the business that they presented to the government officials here, but the spouse are free to do anything in the UK. So they will have access to the business world in the UK, so they can work in the UK. So as long as they maintain their business, they can extend their visa in the UK. So this is obviously today's terms. But as I said, after Brexit, we need to revisit this, and this will be probably a bilateral agreement between UK and Turkey.
As far as business goes, when you said that if somebody is fine to put
hi,
in
Mark.
next model,
We'll have to move to the next question because there are a couple of people asking. You can probably ask your questions on the Q&A and Serhan would be happy to answer.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Lalit,
just mute me if you like. Okay.
yeah. Hi, Lalit, please go ahead asking your question. Lalit, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And how are you, Mr. Farhan?
Hello.
Yeah, I was asking one question. Like after 3 years of the investment, and if you are selling the property, will it affect the citizenship in Turkey?
It's a good question. Thank you very much. No, it won't, because the must hold period is only 3 years. So when you are buying the property, obviously it comes with the agreement that you cannot sell it for 3 years. So once the 3 years finished, then you are free to take off that from the title deed and then sell it in the market.
And still citizenship will be continued?
Yes, the citizenship will not be affected, definitely.
Okay. And how is the property value appreciation per year approximately?
It's difficult to
approximately
these days, but rental it, as I said, 4 to 7%, and depends where you buy. For example, the properties that we choose in Istanbul, if you look at the journey, you know, up until this year, they are all on the rise. But hard to mention it's any value today now. But happy to obviously later on, if you know contact, I can give you some certain numbers.
Around 5%
of Istanbul.
Around 5% will be expected.
Pardon?
Around 5% will be okay.
It sounds like yes, exactly the average.
And what about income tax? This is the last question. What is the income tax on rent or sale of property?
Similar, like it's a good question. When you buy the real estate, obviously there are some tax involved. It's the title deed tax is 4%, but you share it with the developer. 2% they pay, 2% the buyer pay.
Okay.
So when you sell it, the income tax is around. Depends how much money you made on top, but again, it's around 20%.
20%. Okay. Thank you very much. So nice of you.
Thank you.
So our next question is. Hello.
Surbhi with us? Yeah, I think we have some Surbhi with us. Surbhi Mehta, I think.
Yeah, Surbhi. Hi, Surbhi. Please go ahead asking your question. Surbhi is not unmuting herself. She was asking what would be the tax implication if the person making the investment is not a resident in Turkey? And what are the rental yields in BODRUM for the property?
What are the rental yield?
Yes.
I'll start from the last bit. The rental yield, as we mentioned, between 4% to 7% are realistic. One can say it's higher or lower, so it depends on which location and then property type you choose. And as you know, short rentals up until today, like Airbnb, etc., brings higher income. But long rent is a secure, but maybe less income it brings. So 4 to 7 is realistic, as I mentioned. The taxes, again, if you are not resident, etc., it's a bit expert question. We have obviously tax advisors in Turkey. Again, I'm not tax advisor. I don't want to go into the details, but happy to receive the questions later on and then give the exact answers.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much, Saran, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you for answering all the questions. I think there are a few more questions, but we have to move on to the next presenter. I think we'll have to check out the chat and the Q&A where people are throwing in questions, some more questions. All right, so we have our next presenter is Matt Hogan, Vice President, Project Development for CMB Regional Centers. He will be presenting on Group 75 Hillwood Commerce 275 project and updates on the EB5 program. Matt, over to you. Saran, can you go ahead and close your screen, shut your presentation, please?
Just a minute, of course.
Matt, over to you.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you, Sirhan, for that presentation. It's a pleasure to be speaking with all of you remotely during these trying times. So thank you for joining us and giving us the opportunity to speak with you about EB5, a little bit about my company, and about our latest partnership, Group 75. Before I start sharing my screen and get into my presentation, I think it makes sense to talk a little bit about the updates to the EB5 program, and then also to talk a little bit about some important distinctions between EB5 and E2. I guess first of all, when you think about EB5, it's obviously the immigration by investment vehicle for the United States. It doesn't allow you to become a US citizen, so it's not a citizenship program like Grenada or Turkey. However, it does allow you to make an investment into the United States. If that investment can create 10 new American jobs, you can become eligible for a permanent green card. So this is permanent residency in the United States, which can ultimately be a path towards receiving citizenship. Once you're there, you'd remain in the United States for another 5-year period. And at that point in time, you'd be able to apply for US citizenship. Now, the EB5 program was originally established back in 1990, and from 1990 all the way through November 20th of last year, the investment required, or the minimum investment required, was $500,000 US dollars. So the full investment requirement was $1 million US dollars. If you were to qualify in what they, or if you were to invest in what they call a qualifying region or a targeted employment area or a rural area within the United States, that investment threshold would be reduced to $500,000 US dollars. And for a long time, the program grew in its popularity, and it really peaked in its popularity in 2015, 16, 17, all the way up through last year. And starting back in 2015, there was a huge push to reform the program, and in particular, to reduce some of the areas that qualify for the reduced investment threshold so that they could focus those investment dollars into some of these high demand regions in the United States. And the other thing they wanted to do is they wanted to increase that minimum investment amount. Originally, it was supposed to be indexed for inflation. Over the years, it never was. And so it remained at $500,000 probably for a little bit too long. When you look at some of the other programs throughout the world, the US program is still relatively cheap. It's one of the cheapest programs. And you're also talking about probably the highest demand country for immigration. And so they did increase those investment thresholds. Now the minimum investment threshold is $900,000 US dollars. If you're investing outside of one of these qualifying regions, it requires an investment of $1.8 million. And so on that minimum side, going from $500,000 US dollars up to $900,000, it was a huge step. And it has curbed demand so far in the early part of 2020. Of course, COVID has also curbed demand as well, as the markets have slowed and people are kind of reprioritizing things. But we do think that EB5 will continue to pick up throughout the year as people start to get comfortable with that investment threshold and start to figure out ways in which they can kind of maneuver to be able to make that investment. Reason being, and this is where I'll get into my distinction between EB5 and E2. I think somebody is not on mute. If everyone can mute, I'm having a lot of feedback come through some conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Monica, I think Monica from CS Global, she's on. Monica, if you can please go on mute. I would actually just look into that, Matt. Sorry about the disturbance.
Oh, no problem, no problem. I just wanted to make sure everyone could hear me. But one of the biggest distinctions that I'll make between EB5 and E2 is that EB5 provides that permanent solution to immigrating into the United States, permanent residency. E2 in and of itself does not accomplish that goal. I think after the investment price went up, there were a lot of people looking at the Grenadian program for citizenship or the Turkish program, as Sirhan just presented on, and people were saying, okay, how do I find a shortcut that maybe can save me some money? How do I get to the United States? And a lot of people have started to look at E2 as an alternative to EB5. And it's important that people don't think about E2 as an alternative to EB5. Reason being, and I'll get into two in particular, it is not permanent. It is not a permanent solution. It requires that you maintain your business, that you maintain employees, that you continue to refile and continue to get approved for that E2 visa year after year, or time after time. And so it doesn't give you that permanent solution to being in the United States. The other important thing, it's not a permanent solution for your children. EB5 allows for you, your spouse, and any unmarried children under the age of 21 to become eligible for a green card in the United States. E2 will allow your children to immigrate with you under that E2 visa. However, at the point in time in which they turn 18, they're no longer eligible for that E2 visa. They have to find their own immigration vehicle to remain in the United States. And so that's an important distinction that a lot of people haven't really considered. And so what I would tell you is that E2, although it's a good program for a lot of people and it fits a lot of people's needs, it's not the permanent solution or the alternative to EB5 that people think it is. What it can do, and what's great about E2, is the process is shorter, it's a little bit more simple. And so after you've gone and received Grenadian or Turkish citizenship and you become eligible for that E2, you become a citizen of a country with an E2 treaty, it gives you the ability to get to the United States more quickly. So it can really serve as a companion program to EB5. What a lot of people will do is they'll file their EB5 visa, then they'll go pursue E2 or vice versa. They'll pursue E2. It'll get them to the United States more quickly. And while that EB5 petition is processing, while those backlogs while you're waiting your time in that backlog, you might already be in the United States on an E2 visa. And then ultimately, when your EB5 immigration-based visa or immigration intent visa becomes available to you and you're approved for that EB5, then you do have your permanent solution. So it can be used as a companion to get to the United States more quickly rather than just simply waiting through the process in your home country of EB5. And so those are some important distinctions. I'm sure we'll have some questions later on that, but I want to make sure that everyone understands those. The other thing is that what you have to understand is that the countries, in particular Grenada and Turkey, they don't have their citizenship by investment programs so that you can do E2. It's just a benefit of those citizenships. And so what you have to understand is there's not particularly a link. One of the questions that the gentleman raised after the last presentation was, what happens if your E2 gets denied? I'm going to guess that Turkey and Grenada don't really care if your E2 petition gets denied. So it becomes particularly important that if you're going to take that path, you work with a very qualified, experienced immigration attorney that can make sure that you do the citizenship portion of it correctly, that you can make sure that you're set up to do the E2 portion of it correctly. And again, what I like to call a belt and suspenders would be that you would also want to look at EB5, because if something goes wrong with E2, or if you choose to no longer operate that business, you don't want to have to leave, uproot your life in the United States and come back to your home country. You want to have the benefit of being able to stay there permanently. And so that's kind of, I think, some important information that a lot of people need to know about the difference between E2 and EB5. So I will share my screen. Thank you for letting me speak to you a little bit about that. That's, I think, key information that a lot of people need to know. Okay, so I will go ahead and get into my presentation here. Bear with me here for 1 second. Okay, again, my name is Matt Hogan. I am Vice President of Project Development for CMB Regional Centers. A lot of people might know CMB is one of the largest active regional centers in the EB5 industry. We've worked with over 50 clients from around the world. And we've had a lot of success as a company. It's 800 clients who have received that initial 526, their initial approval. 100% success rate in that all of our projects have been approved. Never had a project denial. You hear about denials in EB5, and there are two different ways that you can an EB-5. You could have a personal denial, which would mean that you have some sort of issue in proving your source of funds or proving that your funds were transferred into the United States in a lawful way, which is important. Or you could have a situation where a project is denied, meaning the regional center didn't structure the opportunity appropriately or something changed within the project that was not approvable under the guidelines that the USCIS has laid out for the program. And so, again, 100% success rate. We have 1,200 investors who have actually gone full circle through the program, received their I-829 petitions, and another 1,200 that have received a return of their investment capital. And so that's what EB-5 is all about. EB-5 is about making that investment, getting your green card, and then ultimately at the end of the day, getting your capital back. Obviously, we have a lot of investors still going through that process. For investors from different parts of the world, that process can take a number of years. Right now in India, they're saying, I think now, the latest release from the US State Department is that the backlog could be as long as about 6 years. However, they actually expect the visa status to go current by the end of the year, meaning someone who has a 526 petition approval should immediately become eligible for receipt of their green card. It's a little misleading. You'll have some people out there saying, hey, invest now because it's going to go current. The reality is that it still takes a couple of years, and those timelines are growing all the time, but it still takes maybe 2 years or so to receive that initial petition approval. And by the time that petition is approved, that timeline could change again. And so be prepared that in EB-5, it could take you a little while. It could take 6 years, could take that full 6 years. But the reality is again, as I mentioned earlier, it's still one of the only paths towards permanent residency in the United States that's readily available, and the only immigration by investment vehicle for the United States. So CMB is a big country, and this is something that I like to talk a lot about. I think it's important. I think it distinguishes CMB from a lot of the other competitors in EB-5. CMB has over 50 staff members, and we actually have staff members in our office in Illinois. We have 2 offices, one in Illinois, one in Texas. And we have staff members that speak over 14 languages in-house on staff every day. And so we actually have had the opportunity to work with clients from over 100 countries. Chances are that we probably speak the language that you speak if you need additional help, or if you feel more comfortable communicating in your own language. In addition to the staff members, the 50 staff members that we have in-house, we actually have a sister company called CMB Swissco that operates out of Schaffhausen, Switzerland, and employs obviously in Switzerland, in Turkey, in China, in Vietnam, and they're also, and in India. We have a permanent representative in India living in Gujarat that can travel throughout India to be able to meet with people and talk about our EB-5 opportunities. Again, I think it's an important distinction. It separates us from a lot of the rest of the pack that might just be a 3 or 4 person operation. They don't have that ability to work with you on a day in, day out basis to help address your needs, to help, answer your questions, and really at any hour and at any time because of the staff that we have throughout the world. CMB is also a big company in terms of our footprint within the United States. And as I mentioned, we have 2 offices, our headquarters in Illinois, office in Dallas, Texas. We actually have the ability to take on projects in 22 different states. We have 16 different regional centers. Now, these regional centers are designations that we've received under the US government to be able to operate in particular states. Some of them are actually more than one state. On projects throughout the US. And a lot of people have asked us, why do you have such a large footprint? Well, it's simple, and this is another distinction that I like to talk about as well, and that is we're not a developer. We're not out there trying to develop our own projects. We actually operate more similarly to a bank in that we have people that go out, including myself, and try and find opportunities that we think make the most sense for EB-5 and that will be attractive to our investors. And wherever those opportunities are, we will go out and seek regional center geographic scope and designation to operate in that state, to take on quality opportunities and provide those to our investors. Like I said, similarly to a bank, we underwrite our projects, we properly structure and collateralize those opportunities. And so to a borrower, they look very much like borrowing debt. They know that they have responsibilities to service that debt, repay that loan, comply with all the terms and conditions of the loan agreement that we structure. And then again, at the end of the term, at the maturity date, repay that debt or be forced to give up collateral for not repaying. And because we're not a developer, we will pursue our default remedies if there's a situation in which a borrower wouldn't repay. Those sorts of things become particularly important under today's current situation. A lot of people are afraid of the economic impact that COVID-19 will have on the world, let alone the United States. And there are going to be different industry sectors that struggle. There are going to be different types of projects that need additional attention or additional help. And because they're not our projects, we're not just trying to salvage our own stake in the project. We're serving as a fiduciary for our investors who have invested in those projects. We're making sure that job creation is still taking place, and we're making sure that that borrower is putting that project on a path towards recovery. And at the end of the day, when I say recovery, we're not necessarily talking about the developer's stake in that deal. We're talking about capital preservation for the EB5 investors. We're talking about getting their money back first and foremost before those developers start to see return of their capital. We put those investors first, and that's something that we've always done and we take a lot of pride in. And it's frankly what's helped us grow as a company and become one of the strongest, if not the strongest company in EB5. As I just said, we put our investors first. And what we think we can attribute a lot of our success to is that we have a simple philosophy, and that is, if investors have success, we will have success. So let's focus every opportunity we have on their goals. What's their number one goal? A green card. How do we achieve the green card? We make sure that the projects are going to be built, they're going to create jobs, they're going to operate. We're going to make sure that we get proper accounting of that job creation so that we can provide that information to the investors and their attorneys to allow them to report back to the US government and have success in receiving their green card. What's their second most important goal? This is obvious, getting their money back. EB5, and I'll get to this with the third goal, EB5 is not a traditional business investment, and people should not think about it as a traditional business investment. It's geared towards risk mitigated opportunities that will create jobs in the United States in areas that need job creation. And so we're not talking about putting money into projects where you can generate some massive rate of return and get rich. We're talking about a well-structured opportunity that does have risk because it's required under the EB5 program, but doesn't have to be risky. And so we're talking about an opportunity that we can structure that first and foremost gets the green card, second of all, gets the return on investment, and third, if there's an opportunity, if it's a good project, to be able to receive a small rate of return on that investment. Again, we see throughout the industry all the time, people take that return on investment and they put it to that top goal. And the reason why they do that is simple. A lot of times it's companies or groups that don't have any track record in EB5. They haven't worked with a lot of investors, so they don't have anything to show people as far as, here's why you should invest with me. They say, hey, you can earn this high rate of return. Think of this as a traditional business investment. Yep, we think you'll get your green card, but you're also going to make some money on this deal. And that, for whatever reason, becomes the focus of certain investors. And I think it's misguided. I think if you're going to do EB5, you should be focused on a risk mitigated opportunity that's well structured, that'll make sure you get your green card and you get your money back. So again, I think we've had a lot of success as a company because we've been able to focus our investment structures on the goals of those investors. And at the end of the day, if you're happy with the work that we've done, you've got your green card and you've got your money back, we're a business. We think about the next client down the road. How are we going to appeal to that next client? Well, if we can show them that we've been able to do this with deeds, not words, I think that goes a long way to securing those next clients. So our model is simple. This is what they call the loan model in EB5. In 1997, CMB actually established the loan model. We were originally designated in 1997, 3 years now. And, I think a lot of people in EB5, when they think of their investment, they think of an equity investment. Back in 1997, when we rolled out the loan model, and as we continued to evolve it, and as CMB got bigger and bigger into the mid and late 2000s, we saw a change in the industry, and most regional centers adopting this model. The reason being, and the reason why we set it up to begin with, is investors want certainty. They want to know that once they've made an investment, that there's a defined term for that investment capital. If something goes wrong with the project, that they can get that money back. And so what we do, as I mentioned, we look at projects. We look at hundreds of projects every year. We underwrite them similarly to a bank. We select the borrower. We negotiate a loan. We go through a term sheet process, an underwriting process, and we negotiate a loan agreement. We set up an EB5 limited partnership, a CMB limited partnership, that will ultimately serve as a lender to that borrower. CMB serves as the general partner of that partnership. And our role is to serve as a fiduciary for the partnership. We enforce the terms and conditions of the loan agreement. We review reporting information that comes in quarterly and annually. We provide feedback to our investors. We record job creation. We provide a template for you and your immigration attorney to file at not only the initial template, but also at what they call the I-89 stage, where you have to prove the job creation took place. Once we've structured that investment partnership, we avail that partnership to EB5 investors who serve as limited partners, who ultimately, once they invest, become limited partners in that partnership. Loans are typically for 6 years. Again, they are collateralized loans. They're not an equity stake in the project. They require that the borrower service the debt, and at the end of the term, repay the debt. And if the loan's not repaid at maturity, or if there's some default along the way or some issue, we will, as I mentioned, enforce the terms and conditions of that loan agreement, force that borrower to comply, or we'll step in and we'll foreclose on our collateral position. So as I mentioned, CMB has had a lot of success as a company. It's, again, we take a lot of pride in. This graphic is even a little out of date. We're actually now over 70 EB5 investment partnerships that we've taken. And again, we have had success at all stages. So we've had initial I-924 or 526 that have received approvals at that stage. We have 24 different partnerships that have gone through that cycle, where now that they've received, investors in those partnerships have received I-89 petition approvals, and 24 partnerships where investors have received return of their capital. Not a lot of other regional centers who've had that level of success. Again, what I attribute it to is kind of conservative thinking, conservative structuring, and how we pick the projects, the borrowers we work with, and the way we focus the priorities of the partnership on the goals of those investors. And putting those investors first, certainly, I think, has led to a level of success that we've been able to achieve. We also, as I mentioned before, I used a phrase, deeds not words. We also are one of the first regional centers to subject ourselves to third-party auditing. This is something that we actually did. We started back in 2014, or we started with, and we've seen a couple other regional centers start to adopt this. And frankly, we had even pushed representatives that we had been working with when it comes to reform of the program, make this a requirement. At the end of the day, the investors can only go by what they see on the internet, what they hear from a third party, or what someone from the regional center is telling them their history is, their stats are, their success rate, those sorts of things. So what we did is we went ahead and we started auditing every single one of our partnerships, or having a third party come in and audit those partnerships. We're an open book. We wanted to be fully transparent. We wanted to be able to put some information in front of a client who was doing due diligence on CMB to show them, how these partnerships have been structured, that money is gone where we said it was going to go, that they've gone through the processes that we've said they're going to go through. And we even have gone as far as to audit all of our statistics. So when I tell you before, we've worked with over 5,700 clients, we have, X amount of approvals and, Y amount of repayment. You can see that in our auditing. We actually have those statistics audited as well. So we're not inflating them. We're not talking about, investors and their family members. We're talking about individual investors that have had success that we can point to and say, this partnership has this amount of limited partners. Here are the statistics to show how those limited partners have fared. And so this is important. We encourage all regional centers to do this. It's, I think, hard to find regional centers who are doing this, let alone find regional centers who are doing this who have much to show you. And I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in. And if I was an investor and I was doing due diligence in the program, certainly something that I would ask for. So I'm going to transition and talk a little bit about our latest EB5 investment partnership. That is our CMB Group 75 opportunity. So, as I mentioned, we're now over 70 partnerships. It's called Hillwood Commerce 275. It will be our 30th partnership in working with a group called Hillwood Development Company. A little bit more about Hillwood, but they've been a great partner of ours in that we have served as a lender to multiple projects that they've on throughout the country. Those projects, again, 100% success. The borrower that's repaid investors. We've had investors go full circle through their projects. They're very predictable. As you can see, this particular project will be the development and construction of 3 separate industrial logistics facilities that will be built in the Detroit, Michigan region. In total, this project will be available to up to 29 EB5 investors. It does qualify at the reduced investment amount of $900,000 US. And so in total, we'll be raising $26.1 million to be used for the development. So Hillwood, as I mentioned, they're a great developer. Long history. Ross Pro Sr., this is the development arm of the Perot family. Ross Pro Sr. Is a billionaire, or he unfortunately passed away just a couple of years ago. He ran for president twice back in the 1990s. He got his start at IBM, actually, in the IT industry. He founded Electronic Data Systems, as you can see, ended up selling that company to GM, and then founded another company, Pro Systems. Pro Systems actually had a significant footprint in India as well. Sold that company to Dell back in 2009. His son, Ross Pro Jr., you can see here over on the right, he's the taller guy. He actually founded Hillwood back in 1988. He serves as the CEO and chairman of Hillwood. And Hillwood has been a hugely successful company, primarily in 2 industry sectors, in industrial logistics developments, and then also master plan residential communities. They've won numerous awards. They're one of the top developers, truly one of the top developers in the United States. You can see they have experience in 59 industrial markets. It's 27 states and 6 countries. So they have offices not only in the United States, but throughout the world. This is a kind of a mind-blowing statistic when you think of square footage in terms of development and construction. Since 1988, they've developed 141.2 million square feet in the industrial logistics space alone, in the work that they've done for residential type developments. I'm going to show you a quick video on Hillwood. I think it'll give you a little bit of an idea, again, of who they are as a company, but then importantly also what industrial logistics is, what these buildings are that we're building, and kind of what that industry sector is like. So Hillwood is a company, as you can see, they're top of the food chain in the United States in development of industrial logistics projects. So as I mentioned, and I'll go through these kind of quickly, but they're going to be developing 3 different buildings in a region called Commerce Business Park 275 outside of Detroit, Michigan. And they're going to be developing 2 of these buildings on a speculative basis, meaning it's a strong market. They understand the market. They're building these 2 buildings in their agreement to purchase the land. And they're confident that after building, or really during the construction process, that they will find logistics tenants. When you think of logistics space, these are home to major companies that are largely right now e-commerce related businesses, or they're businesses that are vital in keeping supply chains moving throughout the United States. As you can probably assume, now more so than ever, people have had to turn to e-commerce or online shopping for their basic needs, even groceries, things like that. And so the demand for these types of spaces has been huge. We expect that it could become even stronger. Detroit has been a market that has been relatively underserved for this space. They're, of course, largely driven by the automotive industry, but there are other industries, and especially from an e-commerce standpoint, that have been trying to get into this market and develop more space. These projects will have close proximity to the Detroit-Wayne Metropolitan Airport. And also, geographically, when you look at Detroit, you realize it's right on the river that separates the US and Canada. So it's right on the US-Canadian border. And so it is situated to be a prime hub for logistics. And when you think of logistics, you think of the ability and the speed at which a company can put goods into, straight from the manufacturers into a market, and from one of these distribution centers into a home or into a business. And so it's an ever-growing industry sector. It's one that we have a lot of confidence in, and Hillwood, again, is top-notch in what they do and the tenants they work with. So they've acquired this land through a joint venture with a group called Sterling Group. Sterling Group is a Detroit-based group who's also had similar experience in developing these types of projects. In fact, they have developed these exact types of buildings with Hillwood in the past that are now home to Amazon.com. Amazon, as everybody knows, is one of the fastest growing e-commerce retailers in the US. They are very strategic in how they expand, and the speed at which they're expanding is really kind of second to no other group right now. The third building that we're going to build is actually a build-to-suit project. And they are building it in conjunction again with Sterling Group, and it will serve as space for a confidential online retailer, a Fortune 500. They're in negotiations to complete this lease. They expect to complete this lease within the next 2 weeks, actually, is the latest update, and they'll break ground on it later this quarter. The lease will be a 15-year lease agreement, 180 month. We're confident that that lease will get completed. We know who the retailer is. We just simply can't disclose the name of the retailer until they've completed that lease agreement due to confidentiality restrictions. But this particular project will be pre-leased. It will be, again, a long-term lease agreement with a major online retailer. Again, construction will start on this a little bit later this quarter after the completion of the lease agreement.
Matt, hi. Sorry to butt in, but we are a little short of time, so I would request you to wrap this up quick because we've gone beyond the time and we have other presenters as well.
Sure, absolutely. Yep. So just to jump ahead, as I mentioned, Detroit, major hub because of its proximity to the US-Canadian border. We think it's a fantastic market for these projects. Hillwood is strategically expanding into this region and is very much looking forward. I think I mentioned it earlier, the project region does qualify for the reduced investment threshold. We can see that through statistical data. The practice of getting state letters has changed, but the practice in which the way in which the regions are confident that it does meet all the criteria for the reduced investment. Very quick overview. In total, the project's going to cost about $88.6 million. As I mentioned, we will be providing $26.1 million to the project, and it will receive the balance through construction loans and additional equity that they'll be putting. Now, The developer will overfund equity, bridge the EB5 raise. That means the projects won't be stalled while we wait to raise EB5 money. Continue to move forward as EB5 is being raised. So it helps reduce any concerns that the project would stop or not be able to be completed if it takes longer to raise EB5, or if there's some sort of change within the industry or change in demand that would limit the ability for us to complete the EB5 fundraise in time for construction activities. We talk about jobs. Jobs are huge in EB5. This project is going to have a massive job creation buffer. So it's going to create over 19 jobs per investor. Obviously, you only need to create 10. You don't get to claim more than 10. You only get 10. For whatever reason, the project were to fall short on overall job creation, or if the USCIS were to challenge job creation, which with our projects, model they never have. We have 100% success on our projects. There is massive job creation buffer, 90% job creation buffer for this project. And again, just to wrap up, this is a group that we've worked with many times before. They work with top-notch tenants, including, as you can see here, Amazon, GE, Pepsi Cola, major medical distributors, medical providers. This is a group that has a long track record of building these types of projects. They have numerous banking relationships to help analyze and understand the market in. And really their ability to perform has been second to none. It's our 30th partnership with Hillwood. 25 of those partnerships already have initial approval. You can see 5 of them have gone full circle in that they have 829 petition approvals. And they've restarted repaying loans in 14 of their 29 partnerships that we've already taken on with them. So strong developers, strong track record. So guys, I apologize for going a little bit long on time, but I hope that you got a lot out of the presentation. I can be available for additional questions. We have, as I mentioned, a robust team. So feel free to reach out, get my contact information, and ask any questions that you might have.
All right, super. Matt, that was a great presentation. We now open the platform for Q&As. So whoever has any questions, please raise your hands, and my co-host Lavanya will go ahead and unmute you. Lavanya, can you please take over?
Yeah, Naresh, you have a question. You can unmute yourself. Lalit, you have a question. You can unmute yourself and ask. Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Matt. How are you doing? This is Lalit Agrawal.
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Is it possible to part finance the investment requirement of 900,000 USD?
So it's not possible to, well, okay, so let me clarify a little bit. So you can finance your investment. There are different ways in which you can borrow money. Now in India, it's a little bit more difficult. If you go out and take a loan against real estate in India, you're not able to use that investment capital for foreign investment purposes. And so that is important. The US government actually does care how you've structured your investment, where you got the funds. And not only do they care about you complying with US law, they care about you complying with Indian law as well. And so you'd have to finance it in a way in which it can be properly collateralized and through an investment structure that that is kosher from a both Indian law standpoint and a US law standpoint. So it's important that, again, what I would recommend is if you're going to part finance your project, it can be done, but you would need to be careful and work with a qualified immigration attorney and a qualified chartered accountant that can help you structure that in a way in which you'll have success.
I'm not interested in getting Indian finance because the rate of interest in India is quite high compared to US finance. So I'm interested to get the part financing from any of the US institutions. Is it allowed?
Yeah, and there might be groups that can help you do that. Again, what I would talk to, and that's not typically a role that CMB plays. What we do, and we don't recommend I should rephrase, we don't specifically require that you work with any individual immigration attorney. We've worked with many immigration attorneys. Obviously, immigration attorneys have their own relationships as well from a tax planning standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, and from a debt standpoint. And some of them have banking relationships. And so there are a lot of quality immigration attorneys out there that could probably help you identify a path that you could go to finance that. And then also help you identify banks that you could work with in order to collateralize properly and be able to borrow a portion of those funds needed to make the EB-5 investment. We can certainly provide you with a short list of attorneys that we've worked with in the past. Again, it would still need to be your decision as far as what attorney you feel most comfortable with in order for us, conflict on our side.
Mr. Matt, is there any net worth requirement of any individual applying for EB-5?
There is. So in order to invest, so every one of our partnerships is a registered security in the United States, a securities offering. And so you do need to be what's called a qualified investor, in that you'd have to have a net worth of at least $1 million US.
How much?
And so $1 million US.
$1 million, okay.
There's some other requirements as well. So I think if you had an ongoing, income of over $200,000 or $250,000 for at least a 2-year period or a 3-year period, you might qualify from that standpoint, even if you didn't have the minimum net worth requirement or meet the minimum net worth requirement.
And just like in Turkey, the annual rental yield is around 4% to 7%. What about in US?
The annual, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Just like, in Turkey, they are giving a rental yield idea of around 4% to 7%. What about the rental yield in US in your projects?
So the yield or the return that we pay to the investors?
Yeah, on rental yield.
So it's very low. So and again, you're not an owner in the project when you invest with CMB. You're an owner in our investment partnership that serves as a lender. There's interest paid on that loan, and you have a share of the interest. It's a little less than 1%. It's not big. I would not compare the investments in EB-5 to the investments in the Turkish program. Those are structured differently. They're structured for Turkish citizenship by investment. They don't require job creation and all those sorts of things that the EB-5 program requires. And so the EB-5 projects that you would typically look at, the vast majority of them, at least from the more established regional centers, are going to offer a relatively low rate of return.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have one more question from Rajiv. Hi, Rajiv. Okay, he's not allowed. He doesn't support this. Naresh, you can go ahead asking your question. Okay, we have another question from Manish. Hi, Manish, please unmute yourself. You can go ahead asking a question. Manish, you need to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, you can go ahead, Manish.
Yep, go ahead.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Sir, E2 visa is we have the one client in Grenadian permanent residency visa, E2. So what does similar this one, EB5 and E2 visa?
So the only similarities between E2 and EB5 are that it allows you to enter the United States.
Yes.
There are immigration and tools for entering the United States. The biggest difference, as I opened my presentation with, is that E2 is it doesn't provide you with a permanent green card. It's temporary. It's a non-immigration intent visa, in that you can be here while you're still operating your business, or you can be in the US while you're operating your business. You have to continue to refile for that E2 visa. And at some point, if you choose to no longer operate the business, if you're not successful, or if you have children outside of the United States who want to remain in the US, they might have to look at a different visa option to remain in the US. EB-5 is a permanent visa. It's a green card, and it gives you the ability to be in the US on a permanent basis and ultimately pursue US citizenship.
Yes, sir. And we have here a news about the US government. US banned some permanent residency program, green card as well as citizenship. Is it true? So is it affected in this program?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. So the US government actually last week, it set us through a bit of a shock, and we had to scramble to try and figure out the best answers. But Donald Trump tweeted overnight about the desire to shut down all immigration into the United States because of COVID-19 pandemic. So he did complete an executive order to limit immigration into the United States, but there are certain categories that were exempt. EB-5 was actually made specifically exempt from that order. Reason being is because EB-5 is a U.S. job creation program. And I think a lot of people, and it's an important distinction, a lot of people look at EB-5 or they look at immigration in the United States and they look at EB-5 and they say, hey, this is my opportunity to gain access to the United States. And that's true. But to the United States government, they don't necessarily care about you gaining access to the United States. What they care about is investment in the US and job creation brought by the EB-5 program. And so they exempt EB-5 from that order. They made EB-5 exempt from that order in an effort to kind of keep EB-5 going and allow for foreign investment to come in and continue to stimulate the US economy and create jobs during this trying time.
Sir, I'm Manish Patel from Gujarat, doing a business in immigration business in last 10 years. We are doing the investment visa. Many Gujarati are applying the same, but it creates 3 to 4 years, sir.
That's right. It does take a little while. And so
it takes 3 to 4 years time. So very, very long time, sir.
Hi,
Is it
Manish.
possible to,
Manish, would you like to get your questions answered separately by Matt on the chat?
Okay, sir, no problem.
Yeah, so Matt, would you like to connect? I can connect you on chat.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, great.
Okay, great. All right, so thank you, Matt. That was a great presentation. And I think we had some really good questions as well. Moving on to our next presentation. Our next speaker for today is Beatrice Gatti. She is Head of Government Practices for CS Global. She will be presenting on an introduction to CBI in the Caribbean, safety and security with second citizenship. Matt, can I request you to minimize your presentation, please? And we're moving to the next presentation. Hi, Beatrice, can you hear me? Over to you now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfectly, please.
Brilliant. Let me just share my presentation with you. Tell me if you can see it.
Sure.
Is that visible for everyone?
Yes, it's here. Yes, you can go ahead.
Here we go. Fantastic. Well, I'm here to speak about citizenship by investment in the Caribbean, and more specifically, we'll be looking at St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica today. I'll try to keep my presentation short and sweet. So let's start with who we are. I am the head of government advisory at CS Global Partners, which is a legal and marketing consultancy firm that promotes citizenship by investment globally. But we are focused on those programs that we believe offer win-win solution to governments and citizens alike. We were established in 2012 and we were headquartered in London, which is where we remain, although we now have offices all across the world. We have offices in China, the Middle East, you name it. We have a very dynamic team and it's incredibly international. And it's quite a privilege to be a part of a team that not only works in citizenship by investment, but understands what it means to want to move, to want to reside elsewhere, to want to see a greater scope for opportunity. So that's a little bit about CS Global Partners. I think the first question we want to answer, though, when talking about citizenship by investment is, what is citizenship by investment? And let me go into a quick definition I put there, yeah. Citizenship by investment is a legal process whereby an individual obtains citizenship of a nation in exchange for significant investment. Now, we've spoken a little bit about Turkish citizenship in this webinar. We've spoken a little bit about the EB-5 visa. So it's really important we distinguish between citizenship and residence. The key about CBI is that at the end of the process, you receive citizenship, and citizenship is for life. It's not conditional on you fulfilling requirements for the most part, and certainly it's not conditional on physical presence. Through CBI, you don't actually, or most CBI programs and the ones I'll be speaking about today, you don't have to ever go there. You don't ever have to live there, and that's a key difference. And of course, the last huge difference is that when you're a citizen, you can pass that citizenship on to your children by descent, meaning that if you have a child, that child inherits that citizenship. It's very important for people who value being able to pass on those rights to their family members. Now we talk about citizenship by investment. Why do we talk about citizenship by investment in the Caribbean? It's certainly true that citizenship by investment is a phenomenon that now spans 5 Caribbean nations, 5 European countries. You know, it's in the Middle East. It's in a small island nation in Oceania. It's in Vanuatu. So it's widespread, to say the least. But the heart of CBI remains in the Caribbean. And why is that? Well, I would say the first answer is because it was born in the Caribbean. So there's a legacy there. In fact, it was born in St. Kitts and Nevis in 1984 with the St. Christopher Nevis Citizenship Act. And that act was actually passed right after the nation became independent. So immediately they thought, what do we want to give our people, and what do we want to give foreigners opportunities when they come to St. Kitts and Nevis? And the opportunity was you can become a citizen if you make a significant investment. The other key reason why the Caribbean remains at the forefront of CBI is because they continue to spearhead reforms, and they continue to be very quick to adapt to the needs of foreign investors. So, for example, you'll see that in the Caribbean, they've quickly responded to the COVID-19 crisis. That's because they have an ear to the market. They're constantly aware of what's going on and how they can improve to appeal to a global investor. And the third point I think is worth mentioning, it's certainly my favorite point, is that CBI in the Caribbean is valued by the local population. They see the benefits directly. They know what percentage of their GDP receives contributions from their programs. So there's a huge support for it, and this ensures the sustainability of the program. Now, what I just said, I think there's a fantastic example of this, and it's Dominica. So Dominica is a single island state, and you might know it. It's known in the Caribbean as a nature island because it's lush and beautiful. Unfortunately, in 2017, it was hit by hurricanes Irma and Maria, and the devastation that was caused by these hurricanes was unspeakable. I mean, I have some figures here on the slide you can look at, but just looking at the fact that in one night, 226% of the country's 2016 GDP was eradicated is probably enough to give you a sense of how horrible things were. And hopefully you can see from some of the pictures, however, that although Dominica, it was predicted that it would take years to bounce back, it did so very, very shortly. And the reason why it could come back so quickly was the Citizenship Investment Program, which allowed it not just to come back, but to come back better. They're building these houses that are climate resilient. And in fact, they've pledged to become the world's first climate resilient nation, which is fantastic. I've highlighted some little achievements there. You know, I mean, I call them little. Thousands of new homes, 15 road sections, 19 bridges. CBI has really improved things there, and people see that day to day. Let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about what the benefits of second citizenship is, particularly in the Caribbean. You know, everyone has different reasons why they want a second citizenship, but the ones I'll be mentioning here, I think I have 5 or 6 coming up, are the ones that time and time again our clients tell us. And the first one is certainly safety and security in the face of instability and uncertainty. I think with our first presentation, we touched on this, but there are very many countries where there's social political uncertainty. In the Caribbean, you have these stable democracies where there's rule of law. Economic uncertainty, you don't know where your country's headed. Well, in the Caribbean, there's been economic growth, sort of high trajectory, and as it's mentioned with Dominica, there's these goals of diversification, of sustainability. So obviously very economically appealing to someone who wants to do business and see his business grow. And perhaps also topical is inadequate and overworked healthcare systems. We've seen some countries have really struggled, for example, with the COVID-19 pandemic. In the Caribbean, we have health systems that are operating at capacity. So there's always that consideration in mind. Now we're talking about citizenship. So another important element is dual nationality. And both St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica allow you to hold 2 or more nationalities, so you never have to give up your nationality of origin. Of course, you do want to check with your country of origin to see how they feel about that, and every country varies. But from St. Kitts and Nevis or Dominica, you'll never have a problem because you have a second nationality. Family. I think this is key to any investor immigration program, but who can you add to your application? Who can you bring with you? And I wrote down a little chart for you to make things clearer, but both Dominica and St. Kitts and Nevis really value family, and you can see that right away. You can have your spouses added to your application. You can have children under 18. Importantly, and quite unusually, you can have children from the age of 18 to 30 added on as dependents. And there are a couple of little caveats, but they're not that difficult to fulfill. In Dominica, your child has to be in full-time education at an institution of higher learning, and the child needs to be supported by the main applicant, by the parent. St. Kitts is even more flexible. You just need to show some sort of dependency, and then you can argue it a little bit more. There's also room for parents. So in both cases, if your parent is aged 55 or over, they are generally allowed in as dependents. They do need to be living with the main applicant and supported by that main applicant. Dominica does have a little bit more of a little caveat to that, and it's that if your parent is married to someone, even if that person is not over the age of 55, then they can still join in as a dependent. The same is true for grandparents in Dominica. In St. Kitts, they have to be a little bit older, but otherwise the same requirements apply. One more aspect of family is that, like I mentioned earlier, your citizenship can be passed on to your dependents. So when you have a child, you can pass that citizenship on. 3 more benefits. The first one, I think, that is on everyone's mind is global mobility. And of course, the situation is slightly different now. But generally speaking, the world has been opening its doors to travel, and there are increased opportunities whenever you can travel, whether that is travel visa free or with a visa on arrival. It means you avoid all that time doing your paperwork, getting ready for biometrics or embassy meetings. And we do have clients who have to go through very tedious processes to obtain a visa. It takes weeks, it takes months. And this really cuts costs and sort of relieves you of a headache. And of course, it allows for short notice traveling. So whether this is a business meeting you need to attend, or if you want to go on a quick trip somewhere on vacation. Business opportunities, that's tied in with global mobility. It's sort of speaks to the ability for you to travel and meet more people and see more of the world, and therefore see more opportunity for you to invest or create partnerships. And of course, there's investment opportunities in the Caribbean itself. These are business-friendly nations with friendly tax regimes that one can look at and take advantage of. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not talk about quality of life in the context of the Caribbean. It is a dream destination. Both St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica are beautiful, and being able to call these places home is incredibly important, especially now that we value more and more having clean air and things like that. And of course, educational advantages, even just being able to speak English and send your child to a school where English is taught is key to some of our investors. Now that we've spoken about the benefits of second citizenship, let's talk about processing benefits. What is it like to embark on the CDI process? And I will hone in and sort of speak about St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica's and the differences between the two a little bit as well. The first processing benefit is legacy. And this is not something that a lot of CDI programs can point the finger and say, you know, I have this. St. Kitts and Nevis is where CDI was born. It's been in existence since 1984. And it is known as the platinum standard of the industry for a reason. They have been honing in their processes. They know what the system's like. They know what needs to be done. And very similarly, Dominica has been around since 1993. The program has been around since 1993. And again, there's that sort of baggage, that experience that comes with it. both Dominica and St. Kitts and Nevis have been consistently ranked first in the CBI Index, which is a publication by the Financial Times Professional Wealth Magazine, Management Magazine. And each time, consistently, St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica get ranked first, and there's good reason for it. And part of that is sort of the certainty of the program. Next, of course, is the investment. There are very many CBI programs worldwide, but both St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica offer low entry thresholds for single applicants and families alike. We will go into that a little bit later. The other thing is that there's two options, and one is a donation to a fund, whereas the other one is an investment in pre-approved real estate. And it's very simple. Those are your two options. You're not forced to take one or the other, but once you're on that pathway, you know exactly what you're doing. Simplicity, so it continues throughout the whole process. There's no residence requirement, which is key. You don't have to be there if you don't want to. There's no travel requirement, and not even to take an oath. You can send it in and sign it. There's no interview requirement. Sometimes interviews do happen, but it's very, very rare, and it's certainly not mandatory as a first requirement, first entry-level requirement. And there's no business experience requirement either. Two more processing benefits are efficiency. So both St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica use authorized agents. This means that you have to go through an authorized agent in order to apply. You can't speak directly to the government. And what this allows for is the government has oversight on these agents, makes sure that these agents know what they're doing and know how to process things, know how to fill a form properly, know which documents you need to provide as an applicant, so that your application is ready to go and doesn't encounter difficulties once it's with the unit. At the same time, you get the benefit of having someone who's incredibly experienced and can give you the right feedback. The other element of efficiency that has made St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica famous worldwide is the fact that they can turn an application around in 3 months on average. And that means that from the moment you submit your application to the moment you receive your approval in principle, it only takes 3 months. And there's something else that I think is probably worth mentioning at this point, and it's that you don't actually have to make an investment before you receive that approval in principle. So you do need to pay some due diligence fees. So the due diligence, as we'll discuss in a second, is sort of the background checks. And there's a very, very small processing fee as well. But no one's forcing you to part with your major investment until you know for sure that either St. Kitts or Nevis or Dominica are happy for you to become a citizen. Now, with respect to speed, I think we do need to talk a little bit about St. Kitts and Nevis, because St. Kitts and Nevis is the only country in the world that has a CBI program that offers a 60-day accelerated application process. What this means is that they can speed it up even more. It comes at an extra cost, and it's not cheap. It's $25,000 for a main applicant. And the offer is that from the moment you submit to the moment you receive your passport, it takes you 60 days. So that's the unit working with the passport office to make sure everything's ready within those 60 days. The last point that is incredibly important with respect to the Caribbean is their due diligence processes. And we do talk about stringent due diligence, and I think it's essential because it means that the program has a certain level of respect, and it means that you as an investor want to be part of that program because you know it has that international recognition. So let's talk about the main steps. The first one is that the authorized agents I was talking about, they perform their own KYC on what are the applicants, therefore their clients. And that KYC needs to, in both St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica, it's mandatory that it be submitted with the application. So the agent is responsible for sort of making that first level of check. That does not mean that the unit depends on the checks performed by the agent. They perform their own checks on each applicant. And in fact, the staff at the unit is composed of experts who know how to spot any sort of document forgery, so they know how to review documents. They're trained in anti-money laundering, and they are also trained in anti-terrorism financing. that's inside the unit. Now, outside the unit, the applicant's file is sent out to mandated international due diligence firms. And these are sort of famous international firms that do this every day. They go and they check a person's identity, a person's source of funds, and in fact, they check businesses and know how to do this. And importantly, these firms are chosen because they can get on the ground and check things in situ. Meaning that if you say, I live in London at X address, they will be in London and they will check that you live at that address. If you say one of your major business partners is X firm, they will make their discrete inquiries to make sure that that is in fact one of your main business partners. So it's incredibly effective, and this is how the Caribbean can really sort of ensure that the people who get through the due diligence process are in fact people who want to become citizens and should become citizens. One more step in the DD process is law enforcement partners. And the Caribbean uses both regional law enforcement partners and international law enforcement partners. At a regional level, there's a joint regional communications center, which is Caribbean based, and internationally there's Interpol. And these two units also work with partners such as the US and the UK, and they have access to lists of sanctioned individuals and any other sort of wanted list. So again, if a name pops up, immediately it's flagged and the unit knows. And if you are flagged as a high-risk person, then you would not pass this strict due diligence test. At times, there will be simple questions that come up, and therefore the unit will send a question to the authorized agent, and the authorized agent will ask the applicant to answer that question. So there is a discourse back and forth with the unit. All right, I think we can now probably focus a little bit more on investments. I think let's start with Dominica. There are two investment options. This is also true for St. Kitts, it's only two. The first one is better described as a contribution or a donation, and it's to a fund called the Economic Diversification Fund. Whereas the second one is an investment in pre-approved real estate. There we go. So I put in a few of the amounts so you get a sense of the threshold requirements. If you're going for the fund, again, it's a donation and it's one time and it's non-refundable. A single applicant is required to pay $100,000. And then you see how that amount grows as more family members are added. So your typical family, let's say a mother and a father and 2 children, in Dominica would be making a $200,000 donation. However, you don't have to go through the donation route. There is the pre-approved real estate route. What this means is that the government has already selected real estate that you then can choose from. You can't just select an apartment somewhere, as may be the case in other countries. But the advantage of this is that your investment ultimately is something that the government thinks will benefit the country overall. So in Dominica, they've primarily chosen resorts and high-end hotels, and you get, usually it's a share, so you get a share of that, and you then have to hold that property for either 3 or 5 years, depending on who you're selling to. So if it's someone who also wants to become a citizen, then it's a 5-year hold. If not, it's a 3-year hold. And one thing I just want to clarify with the real estate option is that you are making, in case of Dominica, $200,000 minimum investment, but that money does not go to the government, it goes to the developer, and you get a sales and purchase agreement. What does go to the government is a government fee, which is much smaller. As you can see, I've listed it here. Single applicant would have to pay $25,000, and again, it kind of grows as the family members grow in number. But that is what goes to the government. The rest is what you pay for your proprietary right for that share of that hotel or that resort. Moving to St. Kitts. As you'll see, it's a very similar structure. There's two investment options. The first is again, a donation/contribution to the Sustainable Growth Fund. And the other one is an investment in pre-approved real estate. Now, this is slightly different from the Dominica option because it splits into two. In the case of St. Kitts, you can either make an independent investment or a joint investment, and we'll shortly discuss the differences. Here we go. So with the Sustainable Growth Fund, as you can see, a main applicant needs to pay $150,000, and that's a one-time non-refundable donation. And as you'll see, there's a little bit more to pay for a spouse, and then $10,000 for any other family member who qualifies as a dependent. So ultimately, if you look at a family of 4, it's just below 200,000, right? So it's a little bit cheaper than Dominica for a family of 4. With the pre-approved real estate, St. Kitts has a few more options in terms of what you can choose, and I urge you to go on both of the country's government websites to see the list of approved real estate. And whereas in Dominica we said there's a 3 or 5 year hold period, in St. Kitts you either hold for 5 years, in which case your minimum investment must be 400,000. Or you can hold for a little longer, you hold for 7 years, and that's a joint investment with someone else. And in that case, you only have to pay 200,000. Much like for Dominica, there remains a government fee to be paid because, again, that's the value you're paying for the property. The government only obtains the sort of smaller fees, and as you'll see from the PowerPoint, a main applicant, we're talking about $35,000, spouse $25,000, and other family members other than the spouse $10,000. So that's my very, very brief overview of citizenship in the Caribbean. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Beatrice. That was a lovely presentation. We'll move on to Q&A. Just before that, I just wanted to inform all the attendees that India doesn't allow dual citizenship. Indian citizens have to renounce their Indian citizenship, and there is a 3-month period within which renunciation has to be done. So yeah. All right, so we'll move on to Q&As now. So Lavanya, can you?
Yeah.
Over to you.
Okay, so we have 2 questions. I have Umesh asking a question. Umesh, please unmute yourself.
Hi, Beatrice. This is Umesh Kapoor. I just wanted to check for the sustainable fund, you have an investment with the government. And for the real estate investment, do we have to pay the government fees? And in the sustainable fund, we don't need to pay the government fees?
Correct. That's right. Because maybe it's helpful if I go back to, so for example, let's go here. So with the Economic Diversification Fund, that whole amount, let's say you're a single applicant, your 100,000 goes directly to the government. So that's what the government gets. There's no additional government fee. Okay. Whereas with the real estate, because your 200,000 does not go to the government, it goes to the developer, the government does ask for a government fee. Just a little, in case you've been looking at other Caribbean programs, the exception to this rule is Antigua and Barbuda, where they do have a government fee with the fund option. That's not the case in Dominica or St. Kitts.
Okay, great. So moving on to the next question.
We have one more. Lalit, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Ms. Vitt. Very nice presentation about the Caribbean. This is Lalit Agrawal from Chhattisgarh, central part of India. I have a question like, can you arrange a client for renting out the property if it is allowed? And at what rate will be approx?
So when it comes to real estate, it very much varies from one project to another, and I can't give you a general answer like that. What I would recommend is to look at all the various approved projects. That's sort of the beauty of St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica. They're all listed out there for you, and they all have different schemes. The one thing that never changes is your minimum investment. So if anyone tells you that you can give less than, in the case of Dominica, 200,000, that's untrue. That's the minimum you have to give. when it comes to the investment. And then when it comes to what your potential returns are, it's very much project by project. So all I can do is urge you to go on those websites and have a look.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have one more question. Rajiv cannot ask a question. He doesn't have the. I think that's it, because Rajiv, I think it'd be better if you text a question, because your app doesn't allow you to ask a question.
Okay, so should we go ahead with the next presenter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
right.
great. Moving on.
Yes, I just wanted to say, with respect, because you rightly pointed out that India does not allow dual citizenship. But if you do give up your citizenship, you can then obtain an EI card. So you could do that. It's an option.
Yes, of course. There's a 3-month period in which you can give up your citizenship and of course then take on the citizenship of your choice. All right, thank you, Beatrice. That was a great presentation. Moving on to our final presenter, final panelist for today, Mr. Alexander Mansour, founder and CEO at Nomad Capital. He's going to present on Portugal's citizenship by investment and discuss about a high-end beach resort, Nomad Bay, Algarve. Alexander, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to be discussing about Portugal and, of course, about my company, which I founded 4 years ago. To give you a bit of a background, I'm not Portuguese. I'm actually French. Spent several years in the US before moving to Portugal 5 years ago. So I'm not selling my country. I'm selling the country which I believe, and everything I'm going to tell you now, I went through it and it actually worked fairly well. Do you guys see my screen now?
Yes, Alex, we can see it.
Okay, amazing. So these are my contact details. Nomad is actually a spin-off from a much larger property developer based in Europe, which I'm also a founding partner. We've invested about 350 million euros in Portugal in the last 4 years in Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve. So we have extensive experience in real estate investments, developments, but also in property management and investment immigration. Basically, we are one of the largest property managers in Portugal. We welcomed 60,000 guests just last year. So basically, our products are designed for investors which are either looking for a mix of golden visa, but also safe yield for their investments. In fact, Portugal has increased double-digit growth in real estate prices over the last 5 years. It's very consistent, and it's one of the most booming economies in Europe. The Portugal Golden Visa and Citizenship Program is extremely flexible. I know it resonates a lot with the Indian market because of this lack of dual citizenship permissions that you have in India. So at the end of the 5 years, you can either decide to convert the Golden Visa into a permanent residency or a citizenship. So you can actually decide which way you want to go if you don't want to give up the Indian citizenship. Actually, I know India fairly well. I used to study in Mumbai 10 years ago, and I spent 2 semesters in India. So, and I get to visit India twice every year. So we have a lot of investors from India, and I like visiting India as well. Going back to the Golden Visa of Portugal, the minimum investment required is usually 500,000 euros. But in the project I'm going to show you in a minute, which is one of our latest investments in our new flagship, this minimum has been reduced to only 400,000 euros. We have all-in Golden Visa packages, which include all from the units to the flight transfers every year, to the furniture, to the property management and maintenance. So stay tuned. But going back to the visa, it's one of the more popular programs in Europe. There's been about 5 billion euro invested into the program since its inception. And the main nationalities, of course, are China, Brazil, Turkey, South Africa, Russia, and actually India comes next. So it's a fairly popular program. Portugal has been on all the radars in the last few years, and it's a booming tourism destination. The process itself also is fairly simple. Most of the process is done from India. So, I mean, today with the current travel restrictions, it's even more relevant. But basically, we can have the bank account and Portugal fiscal number open from India. You don't have to travel outside of India to do that. Once you've identified your investment, you can choose a local Portuguese lawyer to do all of the due diligence and the golden visa application. We can advise you a lawyer, or you can choose any other lawyer you want. We work with many different law firms in Portugal. You can gather all the required documentation and have it legalized and translated in Portuguese through the Portugal embassy in New Delhi. And then all you have to do is basically sign some power of attorneys with the Portuguese lawyer, which will allow him to fill and submit all of the application on your behalf. The immigration approval, you get a preliminary approval before you even have to travel to Portugal. This takes between 4 to 5 months, sometimes 6 months to get approved. And that's only once you've got the preliminary approval that you actually have to travel to Portugal to do the biometrics, which is usually done overnight, and that's when you get your ID card. Under the same golden visa application, you can include, of course, your spouse, your kids, and if you can prove that your parents are financially dependent, you can also include them. And the only residency requirement is 1 week per year. And as long as you've done that and held the investment for 5 years, that's when you can either apply for the citizenship or for the permanent residence. So again, a very flexible program. This is a simple table to illustrate the reduction in minimum investment for this program, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But basically, that $500,000 with the different transfer taxes, furniture and lawyer fee, and the golden visa taxes. This is for 2 applications. Basically, will cost you a bit more of 600,000, and thanks to the reduction in 400,000 and the different packages which a lot of our apartments benefit, this is reduced to 472,000. So it's a good discount compared to the usual minimum investments required. So at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions about the program, but I wanted to present to you guys a bit more details about Nomad Bay, which is our latest flagship. And it's a beach resort, which is located in the Algarve. There's sea views all across the property. And the Algarve is one of the most exclusive summer destinations in Europe. People from the UK to Spain, France, all go and do vacations in the Algarve. So for an investor that is looking to invest in a property and generate some yield, the Algarve is actually a great destination because it will guarantee a very high season and very high yields for the investment. There's also special deals and discounts for the webinar participants today. So here is the email that you can contact me directly if you'd like to learn more. And please mention the IREX 2020 code in order to benefit from the different discount, but you may win free tickets to Portugal with your clients, free furniture package, and of course, referral discounts. So please don't hesitate to reach out after the presentation. So the Algarve, if you don't know about it yet, is one of the Europe's top beach destination. It has residents from all over Europe, 300 days of sunshine, and it's also Portugal's leading region in terms of economic growth. Our project is located by the ocean in a small town called Carvoeiro. This is the beach of Carvoeiro. It's a very charming seaside village, and that's where Nomad Bay is located. We have also a daily private shuttle from Lisbon Private Airport all year long, which started in January of this year. In the summer season, we have 2 flights per day. And of course, for our golden visa investors, they get yearly free round trips. It's a 35-minute flight from Lisbon. Of course, when we have investors that are coming to visit the property, it's very convenient because basically we pick them up at the international airport of Lisbon, where they came from Asia or from the Middle East or from India or from America, and we can take them straight to the location of the land. They can visit the showroom, have lunch, discover the different activities, and then be back before 6 p.m. In Lisbon. So it's very convenient, and clients usually like it. This is the resort master plan. So of course, we have underground parking and storage, and most of our guests, the idea for them is to forget about their cars immediately once they arrive. We have free electric car shuttles between the resort and the beach all day long during the high season. And the left part of the resort is mostly for residents which are living there most of the year. And the right part is mostly for people that are looking for tourism accommodations and investment to generate some yield. So basically, whether you are a resident, you're looking for a summer home, or just property to generate yield, there is a Nomad Bay property for every investor. In terms of amenities, it's a gated property, of course, 24-hour reception and security. There's a pool club, beach shuttle during the summer, bar and restaurant, gym, parking, storage, of course, the service rentals, maintenance, repairs, and room service. All of the designs that you see in these pictures, so basically everything that we do is in-house. We have our own interior designers, our own architects, engineers. So basically every year we have a new line of furniture and internal design, which is being released. So what you see in the image is what you get inside of the apartments for each of our projects. There is 74 high-end apartments, all with views, all with private terraces, ranging from 1 to 3 bedrooms. We started sales about 2 weeks ago, and out of those 74 apartments, 11 of them are already reserved. And I will give you some sample units which qualify for the Golden Visa in a moment, so stay tuned. This is a corner unit, 2 bedrooms. Actually, this is one of the units that benefits from the 400,000 euro Golden Visa package, and you'll see it comes with all of the furniture that you see. And this is one of the bedrooms, which also is part of one of the units which is available in the Golden Visa package. So as you can see, the views are outstanding. We are 2 minutes walking distance from a nice golf course and less than 1 kilometer away from the ocean. That's one of the private rooftops of the penthouse units, which benefits from a jacuzzi, outdoor kitchen, outdoor dining, outdoor living, and outdoor fire pit. So before going to the sample units, what are the top reasons to invest in Nomad Bay and in us as developers? Basically, of course, is our prime concept. Right now in Europe, what's booming is the concept of branded residences. And we are one of the leaders into that segment. And of course, the project is perfectly located, and each apartment collectively is marketed within our branded high-end service rental experience. So it's creating a lot of awareness and prestige, which will allow, of course, to maximize the future real estate value of your investment. The Portugal is a booming economy, and the Algarve is a leading European destination. It is Portugal's top touristic region. It represents a third of national tourism income. So it means that it's a perfect place to invest in a property. There's an amazing quality of life, great physical and social infrastructures, 300 days of sunshine per year. And of course, the region itself is attracting a lot of new generations from all over the world, especially from the UK. So the Algarve is the first destination for British expats abroad. So it's important to note that. And of course, in terms of property management and service rental, As an investor, you are free to occupy your apartment seasonally or year-round, or benefit from the resort services and amenities. And whenever you are abroad or simply not around, you can just generate income through rentals using the Nomad in-house rental platforms. And there are no restrictions to how little or how much you rent the property. It's all up to you, so full flexibility. So let's move on to the sample package to give you an idea of what 400,000 euros will buy for you as an investor. I mentioned earlier the T2 apartments, the corner unit, but basically what you get is 120 square meter of private area, which is spread with 80 square meters indoor, 40 square meters of outdoor terrace. It comes fully equipped with worldwide recognized brands of equipment. It comes with indoor parking and of course the sea views from all of the available units for this layout. This is another type of layout which is extremely popular among investors that are trying to generate yield. As you can see, there are 2 master bedrooms in this layout, and this is specifically for rental purposes. Imagine 2 young couples which are renting a property for 2 weeks in the summer. They are splitting the bill and don't want to decide who gets the best room. This is typically the type of unit they're going to go for. So all the furniture is included, 5-star hotel suite kind of designed, and amenities, indoor parking, and that property includes for the owner, for the Golden Visa investors, a yearly flight shuttle from Lisbon for himself and his family for the next 5 years. And that's another example of 400,000 euro Golden Visa property. This unit has a larger terrace and an outdoor kitchen and dining area. And it's also located in the main reception building, which might be attractive to some investors and some guests. Of course, comes all equipped for 400,000 euros again. So thanks for your attention. Now I'd like to address some of the questions that you may have about the Golden Visa program or about our project or just about us as a company.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. We now open the platform for questions. If anybody has questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. Lavanya, can you take over, please? Thank you.
Hi, Lalit, please unmute yourself.
Mr. Alexander, this is Lalit Agrawal.
Hello, Lalit.
As my purpose is to get the Golden Visa, and since no residency days are compulsory to enjoy this Golden Visa, our main intention will be, to invest and earn the rental income from your Nomad Bay. It is really very wonderful. What can you do for allotting a client for this to generate rental income?
So basically, in this case, you would be part of one of the investors that are specifically looking at rental income. They want to have long-term value for their property and generate some yield. So probably the second option would be best for you. Just know that in the last few years, whether in Lisbon or in Porto, we have been able to generate between 6 and 9% to our investors, depending on the type of unit and what was the investment they've made. So we expect about the same thing. And we have a 60-40 split with the investor, whereby you keep 60% of the income and we keep 40% of the income.
Will you guarantee any minimum percentage of rental income?
No, we don't. We have been doing this 5 years ago. We were guaranteeing 4%. And it was to the investors' discretion to actually opt out from the guarantee if he wanted to get the full upside potential. But at the end of the day, we were outperforming, and this became not such a popular guarantee. And because of today's situation, our investors would not allow us, unfortunately, to provide such guarantee. But just know that at least for this project, it's located in a top prime area, and it's also part of the Schengen space for Portugal. So in terms of tourism, we don't foresee that it's going to be much of a problem. But short story, no, we don't provide any guarantees on this project.
If you don't mind, is it possible for us to rent it out directly to any other client without involving you?
Only if it is long-term rentals, which is more than 31 days. And the reason we do that is because we have to guarantee the level of service that is provided inside of the resort and inside of the different properties. The only thing I can tell you is that usually if you do a couple of these rentals long-term, at the end of the day, you will prefer to go through us because we take care of all the insurance, maintenance, and repairs, which do happen from time to time.
Mr. Alexander, how is the income tax structure in Portugal?
So income tax structure, if you are renting short-term, it's which means less than 31 days. 75% of the income as a tax break. So you are paying only on 25% of your income. And on those 25, you are paying 28% tax rate.
And is it possible to part finance the 400,000 euros in Portugal banks?
So I mean, we have pre-financing approved from our different banking partners. But in order to qualify for the golden visa, you will have to actually invest and show to the immigration department that 400,000 euros in cash came from overseas. It can be another European country. It just has to come from outside of Portugal. But then if the property is worth more than 400,000, that difference, for instance, if you buy one of the T3 apartments for 700,000 euros, you can finance the remaining 300,000. But 400,000 is the minimum equity required for you to qualify for the golden visa.
How is the rate of interest in Portugal banks for housing finance?
So right now it's extremely low. I know that for this project, we have rates which are approved between 0.75 and 1.5%.
Per annum?
Yes, so it's extremely low. As a non-resident, non-European, you would be more around 1.5%.
And what about the property appreciation?
Property appreciation, I mean, in the last 5 years, properties have increased by at least 10 to 15% per year in select locations. It started with Lisbon, which is a bit overpriced at the moment. Then Porto came, and lately I would say that the Algarve is the booming area in Portugal. But of course, you know, as developers, we set our projects off plans. And it's really important for us to have this investor base that comes from one project to the other. So if you do a bit of research, you will see that we are priced lower than our competitors like W Resorts in order to allow our investors to have some upside also on their investment, even if the market doesn't increase. But it's expected.
How is the land value in Algarve approximately, open land?
Open land, you are looking at anywhere from 750 euros a square meter all the way to 2,000 euros a square meter, depending on the proximity to the beach and the sea view.
Okay. Very nice to listen to you, Mr. Alexander. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
One more thing. Thank you so much. We move on to the next question. But before that, Lalit, just wanted to inform you that RBI doesn't allow Indians to borrow money from overseas. So you have to show your own source of funds, and only after you become a citizen of, say, Portugal, can you go ahead and borrow money from Portugal. So just wanted to inform you about that.
So we had an example of an Indian national which so he waited for the property to be delivered and he mortgaged a portion of that property, and apparently it worked out. So I can double check that for you if you want.
Great. We've moving on to the next question.
Yeah,
Lavanya,
we have Vishal. Vishal, please go ahead asking your question.
Yeah, hi. Sure. So I'll double confirm this. So I've been selling properties in Dubai where Indian nationals are able to get a mortgage in Dubai, and also we deal in UK properties where Indian nationals are able to get mortgage in UK as well. So just connecting to this answer, I want to ask that in Portugal, if a person needs to invest that X number of amount to get a PR, so that has to be compulsory from his own pocket, right? And then if he buys an additional to that amount, then he can avail a mortgage. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, I mean this is what other investors have been doing.
Perfect.
And you have some that have actually bought several units, and jointly he put in the equity required of 400,000 euros, and he financed the rest. That's also an option.
Okay. So minimum requirement has to come from the client's pocket, and the balance that can be mortgaged from locally.
Positive. That's exactly what it is.
Super. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next question. Vaibhav, please go ahead asking a question. Hello?
Vaibhav, you'll have to unmute yourself.
We have another person. Gaurav, you can go ahead asking your question. Kindly unmute yourself.
Hi, I just wanted to check that out because the Portugal requirement obviously varies from different places. Like in rural, about 280,000 euros is the minimum investment. So what assurances we have the property which has been shown here is that value of 400,000 euros, whereas in the requirement for getting a golden visa in Portugal varies from 283.50 with the refurbished properties and 500,000 of own. So can you please let us light on this, please?
It's a very good question. So to address the 280,000 euro program, there are a few bells and whistles you need to understand, and that's the reason we are not working on this program as developer. In order to do this, you have to either do a partnership with co-ownership on projects which are in very low density areas. And the problem in Portugal is that co-ownership is not, there's no legal environment around co-ownership. So in case you have an issue either with the developer or the co-owners, which usually you don't know, the Portugal is not going to protect you. So we only do full ownership projects where the investor has absolute full ownership on his apartments. So that's really important. And then the second question is, why does this qualify for 400 instead of 500,000 euros? It's just in the guidelines of the government for the Algarve, which as a whole is considered as a low density area, even though our project itself is located in one of the more dense areas and fancy areas. But of course, the legal counsel which you will select will simply confirm this for you, basically. So, but don't worry, this is what is being done. The third point is when selecting a developer, because in Portugal, more than 80% of properties are sold off plan, is to make sure that the track record of that developer and its financial stability is guaranteed. And these 280,000 euro projects usually are rather small projects, very low margin, in areas which are just not attractive either to investors or to tourists. In that regard, they attract third-party developers which are not so well known and established in the country. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes. The other thing, do you mind explaining about a path leading to permanent residency and then followed with citizenship?
Yeah, of course. So basically, and I'm going through that process right now, so I'm well in place to know. So basically, once you've got your preliminary approval after 4 to 6 months, back in the day it took 2 months, but now it's about 4 to 6 months. You got a preliminary approval from CEF, the immigration agency in Portugal, at which point you just got an appointment in one of their immigration office, and you just go and do biometrics, answer 2-3 questions about yourself, and that's it. And then you get your ID card, and then you have to prove that you are residing in the country at least 1 week per year for the next 5 years. To be precise, year 1 you need to be 1 week, and then it's rolling every 2 years, 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
After at the end of the 4th year, so in the beginning of the 5th year, you can already apply for the citizenship, which you can have at the beginning of the 6th year. If you don't want to have the citizenship, you can also apply for permanent residency, at which point you can sell the property, you don't have any more requirements and so on. So, but you are allowed already as soon as you get the golden visa to move and live and travel anywhere in Europe, including the UK for now. So it's pretty flexible.
Okay. And like for citizenship, obviously, yes, I think there would be some prerequisites as well to qualify. Does
Yeah.
language be a barrier here, where that individual have to be knowing about a Portuguese language as well, just to qualify to get a citizenship?
So there is a language test, but honestly, I've been here for now 5 years.
Okay.
Almost 5 years. I don't really speak Portuguese because everyone is trilingual. Everyone speaks French and English in Portugal, and even Spanish actually.
Okay.
So I never really had to learn Portuguese, and you can take the test as many times as you want. But what I did is that I downloaded an app on my iPhone. It was Babel, but there's so many others, and I just took the questions, and within 2-3 weeks, I was able to pass the test easily actually. And there are people that are attendees today, which know me actually from previous events. And there's actually people from my company listening, and they know I don't speak a word of Portuguese actually. So
Fine. The last question here, Mr. Agarwal was asking about an appreciation of the property values here.
yeah.
Currently, the situation all across the globe here, whereas in the real estate market has not been that very encouraging. In fact, people have been finding out a reason to invest now.
Yeah.
So do you think, investing now with this property, getting a golden visa, and thereafter, what could be likely chances of an appreciation you guys as a developer looking at that individual could have it in coming next 5 years?
So I mean, at the end of the day, first, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. And right now, everything that we do, every decision that is made across governments and across the world is based on information that we just had, and we have like a vision of, we have maybe a 24 hours up to 1 week vision of the future in our lives.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, there's going to be an after COVID, of course. What I've seen across market is every time there's been a social unrest or issues with terrorism or issues with the environment, I've seen an increased demand in golden visa and immigration products. So right now we are in a situation which is impacting the entire human population. You have articles in Forbes, in the Financial Times, which are saying that Portugal and the Algarve is the best place worldwide to move once the COVID situation has passed. And actually the way Portugal has dealt with this situation is exemplary. Again, I'm not Portuguese, I'm French, and I moved to Portugal. So I'm selling the country which I believe in, not the country which I come from. But plan B, safety measures, and the ability to freely travel in case something happens all around the world is going to be more important rather than less important. That's my opinion.
Okay, I think we have another question. Gaurav, you can connect with Alexander over message and over email.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, so if you want my email, you get it on the screen. I'm going to put it back for you guys to find. It's right here.
I appreciate if you would send the presentation out on the email on what has been discussed so that, we could refer through it and get back to you for any details we need. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the presentation is free for you to use. You have my email here on the screen. If you want a copy of it, you just email me and I'll be very happy to share that with you guys.
Perfect, Alex. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care.
Thank you. We have another question. Pankaj, you can go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Alexander.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I'm Pankaj Jain. I represent Prometheus Global. We are into global investment and structuring advisory. We predominantly serve the family businesses with global footprint, to say. So my question is, what if a family business or a family would want to fund this investment through their foreign entity? Would that be considered for the citizenship if one of the family businesses which has an entity outside funds it?
So yes, what they have to do is that at the KYC phase, which is done with their lawyer when they fill up the golden visa application, they just have to show that that entity is held by the main applicant, basically. So if you can prove that, that's fine.
So should the main applicant be 100% owner, or if he needs to be just the major owner of the business?
Usually the majority ownership is enough, but we've seen cases where even a 50-50 ownership actually worked out. What's extremely important is that the funds go inside of their personal bank account in Portugal, okay? And that the money is actually explained somehow. Like, for instance, in a lot of Russian countries, some of the companies have bank accounts with numbers rather than names, and that's not going to work, you know. But if it's a legitimate business, even if it's already located in Europe, and it goes and the funds go straight into the personal bank accounts of the main applicant in Portugal, and there is a one-pager to explain where the funds come from, that's going to be enough for the application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. We have lots of questions coming in. Sadbir, you can unmute yourself. Hi, Sadbir, please unmute yourself. Okay, we have,
Mr. Nomad, can you tell me what is the fee you people charge?
So I'm a real estate developer, so and I'm actually the investor also in the different projects. I am one of family members of a family office in Europe. So basically, I don't charge any fee. My fee is the profits I'm making inside of the project. And I'm also owning some of the units inside the project. So that's how I make my money, basically.
And if we act as an agent, so what is the fee we can charge? Or we get commission from you?
So I mean, we depending on your involvement with your client, whether you are a financial advisor or just a brokerage person, or you are just doing a simple referral, sending us an email, the fee structure is going to be a bit different. So what I advise you do is maybe reach out to me via email, and I will give you the full table for referral programs that we have in place with our sales partners overseas.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Sadbir, you can reach out to Alexander offline and have this conversation with him, and I'm sure he'll help you.
Do you see my email on the screen?
Yeah,
alex@nomadcap.com. So I'll be happy to address anything you need.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay, we can do we're doing one last question. So Lavanya, let's take Mr. Najmi Khan. Najmi Khan has the last question.
Najmi Khan, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
How are you?
Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
Hi, Alexander.
Hello, Najmi.
My question is, if we got approval of Golden Visa, and if I like to stay in Portugal with my family, what will be the benefits we will get from the country of Portugal? Like free education for children, or
of course. So first you have free education and free healthcare, and the education in Portugal is excellent and trilingual. So that's one thing. And of course, then there's a lot of tax benefits, which are the prime reason I moved to Portugal in the first place. But basically, if you are residing 163 days a year, you will have a tax break for the next 10 years. So you'll pay zero taxes. So from New York, where I was paying federal, New York State, New York City, Social Security, and all of that, I moved to Portugal where I had a 0% tax rate. And that's for another 5 years. So these are the different benefits. And of course, Portugal is the third safest country in the world. After Switzerland.
We also work or do business in Portugal during this Golden Visa time?
Of course, you can freely walk and travel as much as you want in Portugal.
No, can we work or
of course,
business?
Of course, you can walk and do business. There's no restrictions whatsoever. Like
and
that golden visa
applicable for the Schengen areas also.
That golden visa gives you the same benefit as a citizen, except that you can't vote. That's pretty much the only difference.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. So
I think Vishal
thank
has
you so
one
much.
question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Vishal,
Yeah,
let's end it
Vishal,
with Vishal.
please,
Yeah.
last.
Yeah, sure. Last question. That's okay. Mr. Noah, I just wanted to know, Mr. Alex, sorry. I wanted to know that now you said that you can work. Work means, I think the gentleman was asking employment, working in some company. Are you
Yeah.
sure? Is it possible?
I am 100% sure it's
Oh, very
possible.
nice.
As a matter
Okay.
of fact, we have some of them in our company.
Because
So.
Greece Golden Visa does not allow that.
So the difference between the Greece Golden Visa and the Portuguese Golden Visa
Yeah.
is the same difference as between term insurance and permanent insurance when you apply for life insurance.
Great. No, this is a very nice point. I was not aware of.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so much.
Portugal is permanent insurance. You get it for life as long as you spend a week per year for the first 5 years, and you can freely walk and do business.
Wow, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So thank you, Alexander, for such an insightful presentation.
Pleasure.
With this, we conclude the IREX Business Connect. Please note that all panelists will get in touch with each of you via email and will share their presentation with all the attendees. In case you have any queries, please feel free to email us on the given email address on the chat box. On behalf of Team GMN Events and IREX, I would like to thank all of you for removing some of your precious time for being a part of this platform. We pray that you and your family continues to remain safe and hoping we all come out of this stronger than ever. Take care, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good evening.
Thank you.